Welcome to It's All Fine and Danjee, where we talk about community, health, culture, and all of the big and little things that make life good. Here are your hosts, Dan and Anjee.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is episode number 27 of the It's All Fine and Danjee podcast, and we are so happy that you are listening again.
You sound so professional.
Didn't I?
You really did. That's great.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm chilling right now.
Yeah?
I got a little coffee.
Nice.
It's wind down time.
It is wind down time.
And I'm not having any wine, so that's not what it is.
A wind down time.
Wind.
Yes. We say it's wind down time, but I'll be editing a podcast tonight.
Yeah, you're going to be up a little late.
Still kind of a wind down.
A little late.
Yep. So what's going on with you?
Well, let's see. The norm. I need to do some more exciting stuff during the week so that I have some, adventure to talk about.
I don't know if anybody that, works a normal job has all this crazy exciting stuff. I feel like we've got a pretty decent amount of exciting stuff to talk about, based on what the weekend was or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to adjust my mic live and see if I can make
how much noise you can make.
Absolute mess. You know what it is? I want to turn in the direction this thing won't turn.
Yes.
Just want to
do that sometimes
I want to be difficult
as well.
Yeah.
Well, last week I did get together with my sister and
Yes.
my BFF, my other BFF, Mindy, and we went down to Wekiva Island and I just had a couple drinks in the middle of the afternoon.
That's pretty exciting.
And it was nice. We just chilled out and talked and chatted. Talk.
You've been by the water a few times, so you went and did
Yes.
that, but we went kayaking too.
We did. Past 2 weekends in a row.
Was it? Nice.
Yeah, because we went to say the name of it, Econolachi.
Oh, Econolachi. I think we may have talked about that one, didn't we?
We did already.
Yeah.
And then we went to Juniper Springs with my brother and my niece and nephew.
That's our favorite
So
one.
our favorite one.
Yep.
And we saw some wildlife. We actually saw what I thought was a water bandit, which isn't even a kind of snake, by the way.
A banded water snake.
A banded water snake. And I had to get a picture of it. I was just so excited that I got a picture and you guys went right by it. And then you looked it up.
Yep.
And did a little side by side.
Yep.
Hey, people, guess what? It wasn't a harmless snake. It was actually a water moccasin.
It was a cottonmouth.
Oh my gosh.
I forgot what it was called now, but it was like I guess cottonmouth by default is a water moccasin.
Yeah, and they call it that just because when they open their mouth, it's all white on the inside.
Cottony on the inside. I
Yeah.
gotcha. It was called, shoot, I can't find my picture there, but here it is. It was it just says cottonmouth, but it's the brown ones, not the black ones like a regular water moccasin, but it's the brown ones with the sort of black stripy things on them. But he was huge.
I got a good picture of him, though, didn't I?
You did. He was, he reminded me, this is sort of an exaggeration, but he reminded me of that snake on the Jungle Cruise ride at Disney.
Oh, gosh.
That's because he was just sort of perched right there with his head pointing towards everybody passing by, and he wasn't scared.
No. Well, I think my theory is he was just holding very still so that nobody saw him.
Could be.
He thought he was camouflaged. And then my brother was up in a tree. They were doing backflips off the tree and stuff, and crazy kids.
Yeah, brave.
And he saw an otter swimming down the river.
Oh, I almost got that on video.
I know. It's hard to see. I mean, I'm sure they swim fast too, and they're kind of aggressive. So I think I'm kind of glad it didn't poke its head up because I think they might be even more aggressive than snakes sometimes.
Really? I didn't know that. Wow.
But yeah. And what? And
Well, I've got.
That's it.
I'll make I'm working on a video of all the footage that we took. We've got our cool little dorky GoPro rigs on the kayaks now that I got set up, so it's really fun. So we've got.
I even took some video.
You took a lot of good video, so we've got some footage to share. And honestly, it's I think it gives you a good idea. If you're thinking of going canoeing or kayaking, you will get a really good idea of what it's like. And trust me, you will love this river. Crystal clear water, sandy bottoms. It's amazing. It's the best one. I have a few things to mention as well. First off, my 18-year-old son is moving to Seattle next month, or in beginning of December probably. So I'm super excited for him, and I'm devastated. But, that's what we do.
I know. You got to encourage them to spread their wings. Indeed. I think it's exciting. I wish I would have done something like that right out of high school.
I'm excited. I'm excited, but I suspect if he's really gone for a year, then I'll be flying up to Seattle for a weekend or something.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So anyway, also I've been working on story mapping. You and I went to Starbucks the day before we went kayaking, and we sat there for hours, which was really nice. And I've mapped out a pretty good chunk of the first third, maybe first quarter of my next novel. And I need, as I've mentioned, to sort of map out my stories.
Yeah.
And what are you guys going to be for Halloween? You guys listening? We're not going to tell you what we're going to be.
No, we never do. We can drop some hints, though.
We can. That's true. But Halloween is closing in on us, and I just got to thinking about, kind of wondering what everybody is going to be. So tell us on our social media, Fine and Danjee, or email us at feedback@fineanddanjee.com if you want to share it that way. Also curious what your plans are for winter, because winter in Florida means the weather's going to be nice, and we can go biking and do all kinds of stuff.
We had a little sneak
preview of fall?
Sneak peek is what I was trying to say. Sneak peek last week. It was like 80-ish, and then today it's like 92 again.
So Anjee invented the third segment of the show called the Information Station, and that's probably why she just said sneak peek last week, because
I like to rhyme stuff.
Because she likes to rhyme.
Yes, I do.
But anyway, I just wonder what everyone's plans are for winter. Anjee and I, in a couple of weeks, actually, are going to be heading up to North Carolina. We're going to go to Sideways Brewery. Is it Sideways Brewery or Sideways Farms?
Farms and Brewery. Farm and Brewery, I believe, yes.
So we'll get all of our stuff together and get all that straightened out before we go, but we're going to go visit with our friends John and Carrie, who moved from here, kind of left the busy rat race and opened up a brewery and a farm, and everything I see on social media, everything I hear from them, it just looks amazing. So we're excited. It looks
peaceful and just...
Oh, I know, doesn't it?
It just looks beautiful, yes.
It really does. That's
for our Halloween and Hops.
It is.
October theme.
Yeah, yes. Indeed. And we are also going to be doing some of our own sort of adventures while we're up there. We're going to do some hiking in the mountains, of course. We are going to do zip lining. I'm trying to look at this place that has this really high up. It's like a mile off the ground zip line between two mountains. Should be really fun.
Yes, that sounds exciting.
It does. And I am really excited to rent mountain bikes and mountain bike down a mountain. So those could be famous last words, folks.
Yeah, so we've looked at a couple of the different trails.
Yes, the YouTube videos are great.
But believe it or not, I'm the one that was like, maybe not that one. It looks a little too extreme.
And I'm all in.
Like the side of the mountain is like right there.
I am all in.
I have fell down the side of a mountain before. I do not want to do that again.
Well, maybe I get the chance to do that, but...
No.
Anyway, I'm excited to go do that. And of course, I'll have the GoPros on both of us when we go do all this.
And you know what I really want to do when we're up there?
What's that?
I want to tube down that river.
You do? And you know what? I do too, honestly. But the weather is supposed to be in the 50s or 60s, so I'm just not sure.
It's a big...
you talk about
a little
things
bit too chilly for me.
To chicken out on. You know what it is, though? It's if you're like swimming, even that cold, usually in the springs, the water is similar temperatures throughout the year, so you can get adjusted to it. The problem with tubing is you splash under, then you're above, then you're under, then you're above. So you're constantly wet but above water. So
and then if you get a little breeze going, whew, watch it.
Yeah, really chilly. But anyway, I'm really excited about that. And one more dorky thing I have to mention.
I was just going to mention, you got a little surprise for
yourself. This is all over the nerd news and the tech news, and really, I guess, just the general news. But I am a techie. Among other things, I am an IT manager, director during my day job, as I've mentioned before. And I'm a big Apple guy. iPhone 11 came out this past week. I wasn't going to buy it. I don't necessarily upgrade every year. I have been for the past few, but they added a camera lens. The leaks were coming. I saw it. It wasn't very impressive. All the tech people said, minor upgrade. But then when it came out, all the reviews and all the YouTube videos that I watch when we're laying around the bed and you're watching Friends, everybody was so surprised at how amazing the cameras are. So this wasn't planned, but I had to go to an Apple store to buy something for work. Everyone's in line. I'm like, is it the iPhone launch? And they're like, no, that was last week, but they're buying the ones we have in stock. And I started playing with them on the table and fiddling around. And so anyway, next thing you know, I bought one too, and I'm super impressed.
You should tell everybody about the new upgrade option that they have, because you should just do that.
What do you mean?
That monthly thing where you can...
Oh, yes. So they actually announced that like 4 or 5 years ago, but Apple does this thing now where you can buy directly from them. If you want to be on the iPhone every year program, it starts off for as little as like $35 a month, depending on what phone you want. And essentially what you're doing is you're getting into a 2-month sort of finance of the phone, but a year in, you can sign up again for 2 more years. So you can just do it every single year.
Oh, so you mean a 2-year? You said 2 month.
Oh, sorry. 2 year. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. 2 year.
I just wanted
not
to
2 months.
clarify that.
Thank you. And so what they do, though, is you just keep signing up every year. You have a perpetual payment for the rest of time, but it does include Apple Care Plus, which is the insurance that covers it for damage with a deductible. Anyway, I won't bore everybody because not everybody's an Apple fan, but I will say the cameras on this phone, there's 3 lenses on the back, and it is insanely good. It's the closest I've ever gotten to having like a DSLR in a phone. You can zoom really far in, really far out, and it's a optical zoom, not a digital zoom, so it's crystal clear. There's night mode, which they're finally sort of catching up with the Google Pixel on. It's super impressive. I'm dorking out, and I can't wait to use it over this weekend. So anyway,
fun.
That's about all that's going on with me.
All right.
You gonna make me edit out some of that Apple stuff?
Maybe a little. All right, guys, so stay tuned, and we will be right back with the community call out. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the community call out. This week, we have a very special guest who's right here from our local community in Apopka. He is a local author of 2 novels, In the Dark and Lies That Bind. Please give a warm welcome, I had to do that, to Mr. Daniel Fox.
Thank you so much. I'm doing my tour. I'm so glad I had time to drop by here and meet with you guys. So can we tell everyone? I think we said this last week, but
last week.
Yeah.
You interviewed me because we've been crazy month.
Yep.
You know, scheduling doesn't line up for people all the time with us.
This was your idea, and I think it's a great idea because I don't know why, but I try not to promote the books and the podcast too much. I feel like it's kind of cheap, but I think it's good for us to kind of dig in at least once and kind of talk about what we do.
Of course. We love what we do. So
and I had a good time interviewing you, so I'll shut up and let you do it.
So you are the interviewee now.
Yes.
All right, Daniel Fox. Dan Fox, a.k.a. Dan Fox.
Yep.
So my first question would be to just, for those who are listening for the first time, of course, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about starting to write your first novel.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so Daniel Fox, Dan Fox is what I go by. A little funny story there is I would have just gone by Dan Fox in the books, but I found there's another author out there who's somewhat popular, indie author, and I didn't want to be confused, so I went with Daniel Fox, only to find later there's also a Daniel Fox who writes like fantasy novels. So I guess the long and the short of it is I have gotten feedback that it's a better writer name. So there you go. But I was born in Apopka in 1971. I have been here for most of my life. If I moved, it was only a couple cities over and then back. I'm in Apopka again now. I think we are 3rd generation Apopkins or something. I don't know. But but you know, my family has been in Apopka for a long time. My parents were big in the nursery business, like so many families in Apopka. And I have 2 children. I think we mentioned in the first episode they're teenagers.
Teenagers, but one's a grown man.
Yeah, that's true. And how did I get to start writing my first novel?
Yes.
So technically my first writing of a sort of maybe novel one day was maybe 12 years ago or so now, maybe longer. I used to be a much bigger reader than I am now because of time constraints. I love to read, and there's something about a good book that's just, I love it. And I think my love of reading started in elementary school. And anyway, I started writing a novel. Just always wanted to write, was always in front of a computer anyway, and wrote 3 or 4 chapters and kind of put it away. I don't know why. I guess I didn't really know where I was going with the story. I was very unsure, which a lot of writers are.
Yeah.
And then maybe 4 years ago, I mentioned this to my now fiance, you, and
AKA Anjee.
yeah, and you know what it is? I told Anjee that I'd written a book. She wanted to read it. Of course, there's no way I was going to let anybody read it. She asked me a bunch of times. I let her read it, and then she gave me some constructive feedback, but it was very positive and very supportive. And I came home a couple of days later, and there was one of those little desk, like bed desks that you can get. It's like a cushion with a desk with a sticky note on it that said, "Let's get you writing." And I was inspired, and then I just started writing.
Yeah.
So it was really largely due to just a really good support system from you.
Awesome. I mean, that's interesting to hear, though, that you did already start a novel like many years ago.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that I will come back and make that into something.
Yeah, and I would assume that's probably very popular among authors, that they
Very
probably
common.
have half-written books or 2 chapters that may become a part of another story or a full-blown story.
Oh, yeah. So I'm fascinated by other authors and their writing style and all this kind of stuff. And I have heard of some of them that have like scraps of paper in a bowl for story ideas, or a little black book with half-written stories. So I have a little bit of that. But it's one.
It's probably on your computer. Or on
it
one
is.
Of your devices?
It's on my computers and backed up to the cloud and backed up to hard drives and everything else. But I, at some point, I'm going to go back and I'll probably kind of rewrite it. But I think there's a story in there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Because I really liked it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a dark tale, but most of my books are.
Yeah.
You know.
So I can't exactly remember, but so you have 2 novels, like I mentioned in the beginning.
Yep.
In the Dark, and the newest one, Lies That Bind.
Yes.
How long did it take to write the first one compared to the second one? Like, what was the timing on both of them? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do, actually. And sometimes I wonder if there's something to that. There's something to the rhythm of it, because the first book took me a little less than a year, start to finish. And
that's right. That was pretty quick.
Yes, and I got in, you get in this sort of, I call it the sort of glorious obsession phase, when you are certain amount into the book, story's been mapped out, and then you sort of become, or I say you, maybe I'm the only writer that gets, I don't know, but I get kind of obsessed. So at that point, I'm writing on vacation, I'm writing everywhere, and I think I really got in the rhythm of that in the first story earlier on. And I remember being out by the pool on my iPad and typing away and back at my computer. And so the first one took me about a year. And the second one, I felt like I really had my system down. So I started mapping out the story with the app that I use for that and getting everything organized. And the second novel, which is about the same size, maybe a tiny bit longer, took me 2 years. So why? I really don't know. I think it's just a combination of things, life, getting busy.
Life, yeah.
So
yeah, when writing's not your full-time job, you have to squeeze it in every opportunity you get, and then you have to choose. Okay, do I go do this or do I write? What do I do?
And, I'd love to say it's just that, but between life at my day job, which is more than 40 hours a week, by far. Life with you, life with the kids, other stuff we like to do, house renovation. It's deciding. But I will tell you, the podcast
that we threw in there,
my crazy idea. But I feel like in the back of my head, every day, I start thinking of what I want to do and what I want to write. And so it's just finding time. And I really need to walk the talk, because in my blogs, I write about how if you're writing, you really need to write every day. Doesn't matter how much. And I don't do that lately.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about that a while ago. Remember the writing every day? But I get it. It's hard. I understand.
Yeah.
So what is your creative process when you start the task of writing a book? Walk us through that a little bit.
So my creative process, it's sort of an analytical and a creative process, because
that's what I think I was going towards. Everybody's process is different, but maybe, how do you organize yourself kind of?
Right. And I think, you would be a very good judge of this, because sometimes I wonder if, and this is probably a line for a book somewhere, but sometimes I wonder if sort of self-awareness is an oxymoron. I don't think we see ourselves necessarily like everyone else sees us. And so it's debatable on how we really are. Are we the way other people see us, or are we the way we think we are? And I'm getting a little philosophical, but the creative process, for me, I feel like and I've gotten this feedback from other people, I'm kind of half creative, half analytical, and I kind of have one leg in both sides of the brain like that. And it might sound like that's a gift, but it's a torturous thing, because I can't just drown in the creativity. I have to pick it apart and organize it and then go super creative into it. So for me, the idea of a book stirs for a while.
Yeah.
And I think, is that really a book, or is that a short story, or is that a chapter? How's it going to end? Once I start getting an idea of how this could really be an actual book, then I use apps for what's called a mind map, where you start, it almost looks like a flow chart in a way, but it's got arms that go in all different directions. And I just sort of start drawing things out, and I start drawing out places first and characters first, and then figuring out who's going to be where and what's this character's personality. And, at some point I will maybe publish a copy of this. I've seen some of the big authors do that.
That's interesting to see how somebody's mind works.
Yeah. Then. It is a really big chart, but the writing process for me, I don't want to sound this way, but it's kind of easy. It's the story. And I know some authors just write and whatever comes out is the story. Yeah. I need to know where it's going, because I like stories that have little clues that you may not catch, and then a twist. And I feel like you can't do that unless you've mapped it out.
Yeah. So speaking of your characters, where do you draw the inspiration from your characters, from their personality, their looks, anything about them?
I feel like that's changed a little bit throughout my life too. But of course I have drawn, you put the disclaimer in your books that say likeness to any characters, living or dead, da, da, da. So I'll say that again.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's people in my life that I've experienced, maybe people that I have had some level of relationship with, whether it be a friendship or whatever, people that I've gotten to know enough to where I have been able to see more of their personality. You have to know people a certain amount to to get to know their personality. And it's not really any of those people, but it might be little tiny pieces of different people that I've built into a different person. And then what I've also been doing lately, and I'd love to say I invented this, but some of my favorite authors like Chuck Palahniuk, he mentioned something like this, but as I travel for my day job, and I've been flying quite a bit lately, I listen. I've never been much of a people watcher, but I catch myself now being a sort of a people watcher, listening to people, and you'll notice that people are very interesting. And I guess people watchers already know this, but you might notice a little thing that someone says a lot, or a weird way somebody was, and these are good recipes to kind of throw in, and then you embellish and go with it. But maybe it's a weird tick or a limp or something.
Some type of mannerism about someone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it helps to create a more colorful character. But I also build backstories for my characters that I never write. And Bryan Cranston, one of my favorite actors of all time, Walter White from Breaking Bad. He talked about how he's always sort of put a backstory in the characters he plays because it helps him play them better, even if the audience never hears it. And that inspired me to do that with my characters because I feel like I know them and I know some of their motivations and some of the things that made them the way they are. Even if I don't have to get to that level, I think it makes them seem more real.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it makes you, I think that makes you be able to bring a very realistic personality to them.
Yeah.
And that's what people are going to connect with when
Right.
they read a story.
I think so too, yeah.
So how do you come up with ideas for the stories? Are these things that just come to you? Do you have a dream? Do you get help with it?
I think it's all the above because sometimes somebody will say, ooh, I had a dream about this, and I'll say, ooh, that sounds like a book. More often than not, it's not really a book. It's a chapter or a piece of something. But even sometimes you'll say, well, I had an idea for a book, and I don't necessarily take the exact idea, but it grows from that idea into things that end up. So it's ideas from other people really help, especially if you have someone that knows you right and has a good creative sort of input. The other thing for me is I have always liked stories that are that have a twist that you just cannot see coming, and that's always been my goal. And then I also kind of like stories where there may or may not be something fantastical or otherworldly or paranormal going on.
Yeah.
And I say that because I feel like a story's better if you don't know that, but it's Stephen King is famous for being a, quote, horror author, but he also writes stories that are not horror at all. He wrote like Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. And sometimes I think I was inspired by some of his stories where it's sort of ambiguous. You don't really know. Is something magical going on there? I'm not exactly sure. I like the ambiguity of some stories like that. So, but I also I'm a completionist, and I don't like open-ended things, and like stories like Lost. Really enjoyed the series. I felt like a lot of it was left unanswered, and I don't like that as an author. I want the reader to feel good. So I probably sound like I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but that's I guess I get my inspiration from all of the above, from the authors, from movies, and
Yeah. Well, so speaking of how you said that you like stories that have that little element in there that you don't really know if it's real or not real or otherworldly, do you feel that you have similarities in your writing style when it comes to both of your novels?
I try not to, but I think all authors do. I think there's some similarities.
Or do you want there to be something recognizable in each of your novels that people will know or want to come back because they know, ooh, he always has some kind of this element or a surprise twist here or there?
Well, that part, yes.
Okay.
I don't want the writing to sound the same, but the reality is, writing is a voice in your head.
Yeah.
And I could argue that as a writer, you can have a lot of voices in your head that when you're writing that are different. But I'm not the type of writer to write Stephen King again. Sometimes he'll put an accent on people, or he's like, oh, yep, or somebody that's from the Midwest or whatever. And I don't really do that so much. Or someone with a Southern drawl or whatever. Yeah. So I suppose in that sense, there might be some similarities in the way that it's written, but I also try to use different techniques in my novels. And I might be talking about my novels that are out, and I might be talking about the novels I'm writing, and I don't want to give anything away, but I like the concept of the unreliable narrator, like Fight Club. It's one of my favorite stories, but the concept of the unreliable narrator is a common sort of theme in books, and that is the person telling the story is telling you what's going on, and they might not really know what's going on. So what they're telling you may or may not be correct. Yeah. I also like tinkering with some sort of unorthodox processes or uncommon processes, like maybe giving away the twist early on, but coming up with another twist. Those are kind of some things that I've done in some of my stories.
Yeah.
Or tried to start making something obvious in the story and have the reader go, I already know where this is going.
I figured it out.
And have them be right, and then have something else happen that you didn't expect right after that.
Yeah.
So I like those things because...
People like that, though, because they're like, oh, it got me.
Yeah,
you know?
I do. And that's what I'm after, because as someone who, enjoys stories, I like to be surprised. In movies and books, I have a tendency... Well,
you know me. I love surprises.
I know.
So.
And you do this, too. I think a lot of people do. I have a tendency to try to figure out what's going to happen, and I am right more often than I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So I want to try to remember that kind of reader.
Yeah. So with your titles, I'm just curious, is there authors that come up with a title before they even write a book? Do you come up with them before, after? Do you have ideas for what you would want to call a book and then put a story on it?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I wish I had a better answer for this because, and I should probably think about this, because I really don't know how and when the titles of my 2 published novels came to be. I know that In the Dark was early on, maybe 3 or 4 chapters in. I know that Lies That Bind was further in the story, further into the story.
Yeah, because I remember chatting about the name of the book.
I'm also learning as an author and always learning and always growing. And In the Dark, Lies That Bind are other novels by other people. Mm-hmm. So Yeah,
that's the thing. You always find, I don't think...
Not really. No? You don't always... I think I know where you're going. You're going to say you're always going to find a book with the same title?
It seems that way, though.
I think it depends on just how original you can get. I mean, I'm currently listening to the book Duma Key from Stephen King on Audible when I'm driving. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, there's no other book called Duma Key. There's another book out there I ran across in a search the other day. It's something about the exploding suitcase or something like that, and it there's probably not a lot of those. And it's a philosophical thing, the exploding suitcase. It's not a literal exploding suitcase, but I think if I get my objective for my next title is to make it an original, so you can't Google search and get it wrong. And that will actually honestly keep me from naming it other things. I'll search and make sure.
I mean, if you come up with a cool character name or something in the story, you could even use that as the title.
There's those ideas.
Yeah.
That I get from outside.
So switching gears a little bit.
Yep.
Well, you've already kind of mentioned this, but when you were younger, I was going to ask, were you more of a reader or a writer?
Definite reader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the first book that you remember really being like, couldn't put it down?
Easy.
I love this.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I like to read. When you discovered as a kid that you actually like to read.
I'll never forget this. And I will not name him. Certainly not. And I wish him the best. I'm sure he's great now. But in fact, I might even be Facebook friends with this guy now. Yeah. But when I was in elementary school, I was bullied. And I will never forget that this is one guy, and he bullied me for a few weeks, and we ended up getting a fist fight. Now, I certainly don't condone that. It was my first fist fight ever, and I technically won, but I was still crying, and it was like, But it was a day there was a substitute, and I was excited because the book fair was there. And, of course, I was excited just because we got to go to the library and goof around for an hour. But the substitute, she wasn't super nice substitute, and she decided that the whole class was not going because they were talking, and the only people that could go were people that had money, and she would allow you to walk, unassisted to the library for the book fair. So she's asking people for, a show of hands, and I held up my money, and she's like, okay, you can go. And as I'm standing up, the guy that bullied me held up some money. He wasn't interested in a book, but he wanted to go with me to the library to mess with me. And, for all I know, this guy was bullied at home or something, but he was all up in my face, pushing me down all the way to the library. And we made it to the library. He wouldn't mess with me in the library.
Because there's adults there.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I will never forget this, and I don't know why it's all tied together, but The Hobbit from J.R.R. Tolkien, I remember the cover. I actually found the cover online.
You showed me that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought it. Super cool cover. And I paid for my money. Of course, he didn't buy a book. And this isn't necessarily related to your question.
Did you buy the book just because of the cover, though?
I totally did.
See that draw?
It
cover,
really
right?
is.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And the bullying story isn't really related to your question, but they will always be sort of married to me because of that day.
Course.
And then on the way back, finally, he pushed me down one too many times, and we started swinging, and it ended however it ended. And all these years later, I honestly think we're Facebook friends. But I'll never forget that day for two reasons. Obviously, first fight kind of thing. But that night, I started reading The Hobbit, and it just consumed me. I just couldn't stop reading it. I probably finished the book in a few weeks. And
for that age, that's
I know,
that's a feat right there.
It is, and I would
that's
give
a pretty thick book.
It's not as thick as the next three, the Lord of the Rings books, but anyway, I just the idea that a book could take you away, kind of was really born in my head from that one. However, I must give credit to my teacher that year, Miss Shepard, because maybe a month before that, she read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to us. And at first, she read it for like 5-10 minutes a day, maybe 15. At first, I was totally bummed that we were going to have to sit through that. And by the middle of the book, I couldn't wait. So I think she kind of inspired me to start the reading.
Oh, good.
And from then on, I've probably read.
And you even remember her name.
I do, of course. Yeah, I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, how has your reading evolved since you were younger? And I say that because do you still love books like The Hobbit? Or
of course.
Are you, everybody,
classic.
We evolve through life. So I was thinking about reading. How has your reading evolved?
I guess I don't want to say evolved because I don't want to be, I know you certainly don't mean it this way, but I guess I don't want to be insulting to the genre, but because I haven't necessarily, I don't know if I'd call it evolved, but I have sort of switched the genre of books that I can read. I used to read, after The Hobbit, of course, I read the Lord of the Rings series, and then I read like Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman Dragonlance series, and then I started going down the whole rabbit hole. The C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
The Robert Heinlein, some heavy sci-fi stuff like Isaac Asimov. I can't read any of that stuff now. I can't. Now, the exception is a friend of mine just wrote a book that I've just started reading that's sci-fi, and I'm enjoying it, but I won't normally pick that genre. I don't know where it happened. I think Stephen King was sort of the first bridge away from that for me.
Yeah.
And I have read every single book he's ever written.
Wow.
I like his older stuff a little better, but I'm sure everybody gets that.
That's a lot of reading.
Yeah. Some of them more than once. I just reread it before the first movie came out a couple years ago. But that was the first bridge for me. Chuck Palahniuk with the Fight Club movie kind of drew me into his books. And now I find that I like to read thrillers. And I read books like that, or like The Girl on the Train was a favorite that I know a lot of people read a couple years ago. Those kinds of stories to me are my favorites, where for the most part the books could happen. It's a story that could happen. I do like some of them that have a, like I said, sort of a fantastical sort of piece to them that is maybe. So
that's still some of that sci-fi kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I also don't know what my beliefs are around things like ghosts or time travel, or just in some sense, I don't think we really know how the universe works. So I like to play with that a little bit.
Yeah. So when you read about it, it's exciting to think, oh, this could this be?
Yeah.
Seeing people's just take on different things like that.
If it's done in a way, Michael Crichton was the master of this, and he's another author that I love so much. And I was so bummed when he passed, but, and he passed when he was young. There was a lot of conspiracy around that too, but he had a tendency to write in such a way that you couldn't really tell when he has switched from real science to fake science until you're talking about dinosaurs or a swarm of nanorobots, or then you knew it was kind of fake.
Yeah.
But looking back through the story, you're like, where did this transition? Because at first it was really scientific. So,
cool.
that's kind of thing.
Cool. So if you could go back and speak to your younger self in regards to writing, what would you say?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you asked me something like this during our sort of buzzword question thing, but not about writing.
I would want you to be specific because now, you want to be a full-time writer.
Yes.
So what would you say if you could be back to your younger self? How would you inspire, motivate?
I think it would probably be easy because if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would convince myself to pursue writing much, much earlier in my life. Because I guess I firmly believe, and I believe this at any age really, but I firmly believe that if you chase your dream with enough passion, you'll catch it. There's no question. And I think the trick is not to define all the details of it so much, just kind of the main piece of it. And I would convince my younger self to write at a young age, maybe in my 20s or 30s, definitely in my 30s, because I think by then I was a little more calmed down and serious.
Yeah.
And I think it's like any craft where you get better. It's just like a sport, you get better as you go. And even though a lot of authors, their first book knocks it out of the park, their style and their sort of technique and everything still gets a little better as they go. Yeah. They get more confident as they go.
We can always get better. We can always improve.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. And so I think that would be a big piece of it for me, would be to convince my younger self to chase that dream at all costs. The same thing I tell my kids now.
Yeah.
I tell my kids, whatever you want to do, chase it with 100% of your energy. Mm-hmm. No matter what anyone says.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
So if your full-time job was writing, which you want it to be,
sure.
Tell me what your day would look like.
I feel like it will be at some point.
It will be. Well, what would your typical day look like? Your dream day of being a writer? So
I won't define the setting because I don't know where that will be yet, and I don't want to. I do. One of my dreams is to travel. Mm-hmm. And when I say travel, I don't necessarily mean by airplane all the time, but I mean the idea of just sort of driving cross country in some kind of a bus or a Airstream or something like that. I think it would be really cool to have a different setting in front of you, especially as a writer. I feel like it would inspire creativity and imagination. But my typical day, I guess, if my full-time job was writing, I feel like I would get up and definitely write first thing in the morning, because I have found that on days where I don't do the day job, when it's not Monday through Friday, when it's the weekend, getting up early, getting a coffee, and starting on writing or story mapping is one of my favorite times to do it. I struggle a little bit to do that with my day job days because I know it's going to be so intense, a lot of stuff to do, that I almost need to drift a little bit and kind of just prepare for the day. And I'm not as good at kind of writing before that as I used to be. But if my full-time job was writing, I would definitely do early morning writing, take a break, eat, and get back to it. I feel like, and I know this sounds kind of obsessive, but I feel like if full-time writing was my job, during the times that I'm actually writing, not the times that I'm story mapping or I'm in between novels and figuring out stories, but when I decide it's time to start writing a novel, I feel like I would write for 10 to 15 hours a day.
Wow, that's really more than you work.
I know, but I feel like, the 10 isn't more than I work, but 15 would be. 15. But I feel like there's an obsession that makes a story so good. It's like a movie you can't stop watching, and I feel like I just want to bury myself in it. Now, would I do that 7 days a week? Probably not. I think I would still want to take a day or two throughout the week to break and breathe and enjoy time with the people I enjoy being around.
Well, you have to go do some people watching so that you have more,
Well, once you get to writing, though, for me, I feel like that's why there's such time in between. Because once I get to writing, I want to write. I don't want to write a few chapters and then figure out where the story's going or figure out what the characters are.
You're a completionist, so you want it to get done.
Yeah, I do. It doesn't always work that way.
That was a good answer. I love the part about traveling because, I want to do that too.
Of course.
So being able to just traveling on the road, I think that would be just really great for a writer because things that you see as you're driving along, it might be some weird old bus that's got a weird flag on it or something, and things
stories.
like that. It's like you just got to have your little, your notepad or your phone so that you can, hey, Siri, take a note, about these weird things that you may see when you're traveling through small towns and stuff like that.
Oh, indeed. And as you said, people. I mean, you encounter so many people. But I agree. The part of that dream I don't want to define too much, though, is, if I had a little desk spot where I could see out the window and it's a forest for a week or 3 or a month, and it's a beach and it's a mountains and it's a desert, and I feel like I couldn't stop my brain from just mapping that all out into and I think part of that is that sort of childlike wonder about everything. I still have that. I still can imagine, what if in that tree there was a tunnel that led to a time machine or something?
Oh, wow. Quite the imagination.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, thank you for answering my questions.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I think I came up with some interesting ones that are a little different than the norm.
You really did. You didn't ask me about which charities or organizations I like to contribute to.
I did not, but I'm going to ask you something. It's a little different than what I normally.
Well, I wanted to say before, though, I feel like the reason that you didn't is because they're the same ones that you mentioned.
Of course.
And
but I do want to ask something about that.
Yeah.
What charities or organizations do you look forward to working with in the future?
So I'll be honest, I don't know the names or specifics of a charity, but I guess what I always envisioned is when everything takes off, I like to say it that way because I think you have to put it out there for it to happen. But when everything takes off, I love the idea of helping kids, of course, to read, helping kids that are, lesser fortunate kids to learn to read, to get books, to not just, books on school studies and, the typical English and math and all the foundational classes, but, fiction and
fun stuff,
and fun creative reading. And also, I would like to get involved in organizations that help elderly people. And I'm sure there are organizations like this, but I love the idea of when older people can't read anymore, their eyes are gone, or they can't hold a book, or I love the idea of reading to, a service that reads to older people as a story. Reminds me again of that teacher, because I guess I feel my mortality lately with my son moving out. I'm not too far away from 50.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about things that I feel like would be nice for myself when I can't read anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wish I had a better answer, but I feel like
that's a great direction.
When the time comes, I will definitely invest in all that.
All right. Well, thank you so much once again for sitting down with me. And hey, guys.
I sit down with you every week.
Oh, you know what I'm saying. So we are not going to have an information station this week. So we want to hear from you guys, though. Please let us know how we're doing. Give us a shout.
Yes. And speaking of a shout, I want to give a shout out to the Hit Fit Gym in Apopka real quick.
Yes.
They have made it in the Apopka Chiefs annual Best of Apopka.
Did they?
They are ranked in the top 3, and there are thousands and thousands of votes that went into this sort of Best of Apopka. I don't know all the numbers. I just think, how cool is that? Hit Fit Gym in Apopka.
I do. I voted for them. I remember going through.
Very nice.
Just trying to vote for my favorites of people that I've actually had interaction with in Apopka.
Well, that gym is so cool. It's the neatest kind of workout. And Nicole and the group in there, they're just all so friendly and nice. And I'm so excited to hear that they are doing well.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and if you are looking for a gym and you're in the area, go check them out. They're in there. We have a river walk. They're in a spot that is... if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But there's a Subway on the corner. Everybody knows where that is. So it's kind of around that corner and facing sort of the back of the bank. I think there's a bank building right there. Yeah, facing 441. So go check them out.
Awesome. Yeah. Give us a call. Let us know how we're doing, guys. 407-490-3899. Or you can email us at feedback@fineanddanjee.com or find us on all social media, Fine and Danjee. And remember that it still is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
Yep. We got 5 more days or so.
Yep. So until the end of September, you still have a chance to make your donation to alexslemonade.org.
Yep.
Right. And email us your receipt. Let us know that you made that contribution to help with funding towards finding a cure for childhood cancer. And we will get you in our drawing, which we will be doing the last day of the month.
That's right. So the last day of the month is this coming Monday. So on Monday, we are going to do a Facebook Live broadcast, and we are going to pull a randomizer with all the names, go through all the prizes. We are emptying the prize stash. We have all kinds of cool stuff. We have free kayak and canoe rentals from Wekiva Island. We have discounts on cabanas. We have Google Home Mini. We have fitness tracker, restaurant gift cards, T-shirts. We've got a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah, we're giving it all away.
We are unloading. It's time to rebuild the gift.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
So get those generous donations in, guys. And thank you so much for listening. And remember, at the end of the day, it's all fine and dandy.
That was cool. Thanks. No, I'm leaving that in. That's not the information station. That's the sneak peek of the week.
This was this and that. We just talked about what we're doing.
I think you got to change that to the sneak peek of the week.
Stop it. I'm gonna get my tongue all tied.
Oh wow, what a great question. I wish.